In this video, we evaluate the integral from 0 to pi over 2 of 1 over 1 plus sin x dx. We start by multiplying both numerator and the denominator by 1 minus x. So we have from 0 to pi over 2, 1 minus sin x over 1 plus sin x times 1 minus sin x dx. This equals to from 0 to pi over 2, 1 minus sin x over 1 minus sin square x dx. Now we know that sin square x plus cosine square x equals to 1, so 1 minus sin square x equals cosine square x. So now we have from 0 to pi over 2, 1 minus sin x over cosine square x dx. We now split the integrand into two fractions and two integrals. So we have from 0 to pi over 2, 1 over cosine square x dx minus from 0 to pi over 2 sin x over cosine square x dx. This equals to from 0 to pi over 2 secant square x dx minus from 0 to pi over 2 we have sin x over cosine square x. So we have sin x over cosine x, which is tan x, and we are left with 1 over cosine x, which is secant x tan x dx. Now the antiderivative of secant square x is tan x, so we have tan x from 0 to pi over 2, but we replace pi over 2 with b, since tan x is undefined for pi over 2. Since there is a vertical asymptote, so we take the limit as b goes to pi over 2. And this is minus also. Now the antiderivative of secant x tan x is secant x. So we have take the limit of secant x from 0 to b as b goes to pi over 2. Again, since secant x, which is 1 over cosine x, is undefined for pi over 2. So now we have limit of tan b as b goes to pi over 2 minus tan x of 0, tan of 0 is 0, minus limit of secant b as b goes to pi over 2 minus secant of 0 is 1. So we have limit, we write tan b as sine of b over cosine b as b goes to pi over 2 minus 0 and minus limit of, we write secant b as 1 over cosine b as b goes to pi over 2 minus negative 1 is plus 1. Now we combine those two limits into one limit. So we have limit of sine b minus 1 over cosine b as b goes to pi over 2 plus 1. Now we have sine of pi over 2 as 1 minus 1 is 0 over cosine pi over 2, which is also 0. So we have the case of 0 over 0. So we can use L'Hopital's rules. So this equals to limit of the derivative of the numerator is cosine b over the derivative of the denominator, which is cosine b, is minus sine b as b goes to pi over 2 plus 1, and and this equals 2. Cosine of pi over 2 is 0. Over sine b of pi over 2 is 1. So we have 0 over negative 1, which is 0 plus 1, and this equals 2, 1, and this is the final answer.